the recording in progress that you use that weapon.
All right. Like, make like a motion in a second to start the special meeting for September 8th, 2025, the Hudson Industrial Development Agency. All in favor?
Alright.
We get attendance call,
Heather Campbell. Here. Kamal Johnson.
present.
Cheryl Kesler is absent. Randall Martin is absent. Dominic Moranti is on Zoom, but he's absent because there's no qualifying exemption. Charles Millar,
Here.
Margaret Morris. Sure. Have a quorum.
All right. So we have a presentation from
Yes.
Penrose Development.
Good morning. As you know, the purpose of this meeting is to review the financial data relating to this project. I think we're all aware of the fact that this project is the proposed redevelopment of the J.L. Edwards Elementary School, which, as we also know, has been sitting empty for a number of years, and several developers have had it under contract, along with the Hudson Development Corporation over the last 3 or 4 years, with no ability to move the project forward. In August, the IDA received an application from Penrose Development, and they have a contract for sale approved by the school board, subject to approval by the voters later next month. The first sheet in the packet before you is their rent roll. I thought it was very important for you. It's got blue. Yeah. I thought it was very important for us to review the fact that they are committing to limit the rents to 50% and 60% of income, and there'll be 20 units that will be at $920 a month, 17 units at $920, 4 units at $877, 8 units at $1,074, and 16 units at $1,132. This is in a market just where a 1-bedroom in Hudson, there are only 6 units at below that amount, or at this point, maybe fewer. So it's a situation where if this project does go through, it will make a significant contribution to the housing crisis in the city of Hudson. This piece of sheet is also important because it calculates $771,000 of rent based on the 2025 HUD approved caps on rents for this type of a project. And that will be used on a next page to show you how the assessor reached a conclusion as to what assessment would be used. That's the black and white and with a little yellow on it. As you can see, step 1, well, first of all, the city equalization rate is 71%. We have the current tax rates totaling $25.17. The first step in calculating the assessed value under section 581A of the New York State Real Property Tax Law, which, as we discussed at the last meeting, requires the assessor to assess projects of this nature receiving low-income housing tax credits with an assessment based on an income approach, as opposed to other methods of assessing real property. The $771,000, which we saw on the previous page, ties into the revenue, gross potential revenue. And when we take out 5% for vacancies, we get an effective gross rent of $732,500. We've used the developer's pro forma expenses to calculate operating expenses and net income. This model results in a net income of $188,822. As you recall, last Thursday, we received the BJH Advisors Report relating to the project. And in that report, they did indicate a range of capitalization rates that should be considered by the assessor. Those rates were based on a CoStar report that BJH had identified. They also took into account the Albany Market CoStar report that Penrose presented as part of their application. The Penrose value was 8.8% cap rate, grossed up for taxes to 11.32. And BJH with taking the numbers that they found in the reports that they reviewed, upping it for taxes was 10.4%. I presented all of this information to the assessor last week, including the backup materials for her review. And on Friday, she said that she felt it should be valued based on a 7% cap rate.
Can I ask a question? So the 1915 here, the assessed value, far right hand side under 7%, that's the assessed value under the 7% cap, correct?
Yes, that would be how she would assess it if she were to assess it today. Obviously, right now, until they take title, and until this project moves forward, it's actually the assessment that would be put on it, when the pilot schedule kicks in, after construction.
So how does that tie back to, is it the 1991-071?
I think it's just a, small,
Just round.
differential in
Okay.
Excel. So taking the 1,915,000 and assessed value. And if you, for a moment, go to the page that has, two schedules with, red column. What we did here is, we took the Penrose proposal, year 1 and 2 during construction. They proposed no, tax payment or pilot payment in lieu of tax. Currently, as we discussed, the project is assessed at 6.5 million, but they just paid $1,150,000. I'm sorry, paid $2,150,000 for it. So presumably in the next tax cycle, the assessor would use that as a market rate. And they then proposed that from year 3 through 32, that they pay $19,500, escalating at 2% for a fixed payment schedule from $19,500 to $34,629. When you total that, it's $791 in nominal dollars, and it's $551,259 in present value dollars at 2%. As we discussed, one aspect of their proposal that there was some comment on by the agency was that it was a fixed schedule, not tied to any increases in rent that they would receive. And in fact, if you take 19,500 and calculate it, those are 2025 numbers. Obviously, in 2027, when they go, or 8, when they go online, those numbers presumably will have increased. But currently, it's 2.5%. It's basically a 2.5% shelter rent pilot, but it's fixed. If you go to the 5% shelter rent escalator that you see to the right of their Penrose proposal, you'll see that as the agency directed at the last meeting, that we should include a tax payment during construction under our policy. That's what we provide for. We did reduce it, so you indicated you didn't feel it was appropriate to base it on a $6.5 million assessment. But if you take the $1,425,000, that's approximately 70% of a $2.1 million assessed value. at the current tax rate, that would generate $35,800. We then escalated, we left the assessment flat for the 2 years of construction. We didn't put a 2% escalator on it. And then in year 3, year 2028, we plugged in the $1,991,000 assessed value. That then was escalated at 2% under our policy, as was the tax rate, which is how we have been calculating these values for a number of years. That resulted in if you jump over to the shelter rent column, based on or you can see those numbers in the first 5 columns is basically the Penrose proposal. And then the dark bold line where it says shelter rent 3 in year 3. The shelter rent was the 732.5 that we took off the other page. And when you escalate that shelter rent at 2% a year and you multiply it by 5%, you get the proposed pilot payment. The difference here is that the one method of doing this would be to set the 19,500 as the minimum, like we did in the K&R deal. And as I understand, that's how Hudson Terrace is. I'm sorry, not the 19,000, the 36,000 would be the minimum.
Yeah,
And that's how they did on Hudson Terrace.
correct.
And so to be consistent with how the agency is handled and the city has handled other pilots.
So in the resolution, this is an important distinction, that this is based upon, if we're using as a proxy 3% here. But if the rents go up by more than that, whatever, it will move with the rents.
Yes.
And so, I guess this is for Chris. Number 3 on page 10, therefore pilot payments shall make the agency equal to 5% of shelter rents with a minimum of, that's where that is.
That's what I cut in.
I got it, thank you.
As you can see, when you take the net present value of that, it's 1.15 million, which is $958,000 less than what they've asked for. Sorry, it's 900 and
Less than the.
50, right,
than the-
versus what we would receive if there was no pilot, not what they had asked for.
Yes.
They had asked for 551. And it's about double what they've asked for. If you go to the next page, it should be an 8.5 by 11. With a 5% shelter rent, which has been modeled, it looks like, yeah, no, they're boxes.
Yeah, still without the right.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
You see if you get another copy, Randall. Oh, you got it. So what we did here is we just went through the analysis, but here's a summary of it. The 5% shelter rent would provide $958,000 exemption off full taxes. And it results in $554,000 more than the pilot payments proposed by Penrose. If you look at the no project, there's no taxes, because it would still be owned by the school district and exempt. The project with no pilot is the summary of the numbers from the previous chart, as well as the numbers for Penrose. So they requested a $1.5 million exemption, and based on this summary of the analysis that we just went over, we're proposing a $958,000 exemption The footnote there, year 1 and 2 is based on a $2 million fair market value assessment and a 71% equalization rate approximately. Assessed value is calculated at a 7% capitalization rate is determined by the city assessor. And the shelter rents utility removed less 5% vacancy. And the shelter rent calculation would be in accordance with the HUD guidelines, which Chris has incorporated into the criteria. If you then go to this large sheet. There's 2 large sheets with this type of data. At the top, it says
Is the one
it says hotel, but it's not meant to say
the
hotel.
one with
It's the larger one, not
One
the
with
shorter
that,
one.
yeah.
Yeah. Obviously, this is not a hotel, but the total project cost, if you look at the top left-hand corner, 41,553,000. We've included the mortgage value, mortgage tax exemption and the sales tax exemption. Even though you're not granting it, it would have, this project is impacting the city and the county as it relates to those. And also this model was built in a way that it wouldn't work if we didn't include them. And we felt that even though you weren't granting them, they are going to get them elsewhere and it will impact your overall evaluation as how you'd like to proceed. We have the same county, city and school tax rates. We have the 2% escalator. We have the current assessment at $6.5 million, but I also reduced that to $2.414 million assessed value in year 1. You can see it's basically the same analysis up until the 4th column, D. There, what we did is we said if we gave Penrose the same with their economics, use the same model we used for Providence Hall, what would the tax payment be? And the tax payment would basically be what we're concluding it would be at full value assessment. And when you use the Galvin model, they would have to pay $1.8 million. So this was to show you the fact that the Penrose project was a Section 8 project. The Galvin project was a moderate restrictions from 80 to 130%. So clearly, if the developer is looking to go to 50 to 60% of median income, you're considering providing a benefit based on their willingness to restrict those limits for 30 years. If you go to the long page, this just focuses on the Penrose project.
So I just want to make sure I understand this. So looking at Providence and Schuyler, which is restricted, right? If the point of reference here is the 1.4 million.
Right.
Under that compared to the fact that.
We're doing 900.
We're doing 1.1.
Yeah.
So that's where.
So for each level of, if you're.
Right. If we were to do it using the.
Yeah, we wanted to be sure that we could demonstrate
Right.
that for each level of your willingness to restrict the income, the IDA is considering giving you a greater benefit.
Yeah. And could you also just explain the graphic at the top of this page? I was trying to find that one.
Well, I think what it shows is, no IDA pilot, well, if you compare the pilot scenarios. Obviously if there's.
Oh, I get it.
Okay.
Now that
Right.
you've explained.
Okay.
That might, it's okay.
Well, if we go to this sheet, what we did here was, we looked at specifically, the benefits of the shelter rent. The benefits is that the IDA is getting an administrative fee. They're going to get $1,105,000 in taxes, and they're going to get direct payroll benefits representing 25% of their construction cost and 25% of their operating staff. So in other words, we can't restrict where they have to, this is a commitment that they'll get 25% of their workers from, assuming they get 25% of their workers from the local community. Obviously, and when you look at what they're giving up or what they're asking for, it's sales tax. It's split 50-50 with the state, and then the county gets the 50% and gives 13% to the city, so they get 88% or 87% of what the state gets at the county level, and then the city would have $87,000 in. Then you have the mortgage recording tax, and then you have the foregone property tax. And you know, when we did calculate this, we came up with a 1.43 benefit, not a 1.83. So I have to go back and I'll send you that updated schedule before we leave. But I do think it's it certainly demonstrates that there's a greater than a 1-to-1 benefit when you include the construction at 25%, and you fully load it with the sales tax and the
What was the revised benefit number,
1.43 is the total benefit. I just have to check a formula. Now, if you look finally at the proposed Penrose, it's called scenario, and that may, I think we've corrected that error here. So if you again look the impact of the tax exemptions, 13,000 more in sales. I've got those reversed. 13,000 in mortgage tax, and I'll correct that for the final. $1.3 million in sales tax. And then you have the 957, you know, somewhere we had 958, but you know, it rounds in property tax exemption. If you look on the jobs created, you know, basically if you take the construction jobs and price them out, and then you take 5 people at $50,000 a year for 30 years, you get 8.9 million, but you know, that is not really realistic to use, so we use 25%. And when you use that, you do get to the number that we have in the resolution in terms of the gross benefit to cost ratio of 1.43. Finally, for your, I guess at that point, the question, which would, do you have questions? And the final thing that we have prepared for your review and discussion and potential consideration on Wednesday is a draft resolution. Chris, would you mind giving a brief overview of your resolution?
Yes, I would love to. And then after we do that, I think we should go back. Do you have the printout of the board eval criteria so that we could perhaps walk through that as well when we're done with the resolution?
Yes.
Okay.
We're gonna do that today, but
Yep.
this is
So did you provide the resolution to the board so we can walk through that?
they have it.
Okay.
So Chris, let's look at the resolution. A proposed draft resolution that you may or may not approve as written on Wednesday.
Right. So this resolution was drafted to align with the 5% proposal, obviously, you know, dependent on discussion today with the board and the developer. So this assumes that 65 units are limited to rents affordable to seniors at or below 60% of AMI. I understand Mike is reviewing a more limited set of numbers, but that was the application set of numbers. Their NOI is based on, I think, slightly lower numbers, but this is the regulatory agreement requirement that would be applicable under the agreement unless, you know, we need to fine tune that. The typical agreements that we would consider would be the same as we always do. the lease agreement and lease, the company lease agreement and lease back so that we have the ability to offer the financial assistance. And then the agency agreement, the pilot agreement. We would not be doing, excuse me, we would be doing the uniform project agreement, not the agency agreement, because we would not be doing a sales tax exemption in this case. So that would be a distinction. We need to, I apologize, we need to revise this section because we were aligning we were in the process of aligning this resolution to the 5%. So we need to change the whereas at the bottom of the second page to provide for, we'll just revise that to reference the pilot schedule that's described in the attached Exhibit A rather than referring to that 0% section, all right? We will change that, all right, and resend that back to you before approval. This is a recites the notice of public hearing and the notice to taxing jurisdictions process that included the intent to provide for a deviation from the agency's policy because this project is 30 years, more than 30 years. It doesn't align with the agency's policy. It recites that the Common Council undertook the seeker review as a lead agency and included the IDA as one of the involved agencies, so you would be relying on those findings and that determination. And so the application documents, the cost benefit analysis that BJH provided, and the CEDC's on behalf of the IDA analysis that Mike was reviewing with you today. These are the factors that are being taken into account by the IDA. So then we'll go along to, these are just reciting the agreements that would be approved if the agency approves the resolution. And we'll go through Exhibit A in a minute. But then the sort of operative part of the resolution, which starts on page 5, reviews the basis for the findings of the IDA having to do with the demographics in the city, the expectation for the number of jobs, permanent full-time equivalent jobs to be created, the cost benefit analysis being approximately 957,543 as Mike just reviewed. And that's only the pilot in terms of the value of the benefits provided by the agency. And then, you know, the financial analysis takes into account the other sales and mortgage tax exemptions that it appears that the project would be qualifying for. So the project costs, as Mike indicated, are projected to be approximately 41.5 million. A lot of that is in the form of state and federal assistance, as you can see. And that's typical for this type of project, you know, with the required regulatory agreement at that level. And their expectation is completion to occur by March of 2028. That's assuming, of course, that they receive the benefits from the state that they're applying for. So the cost benefit finding here is the 1.43 that you see there. And so based on those determinations, the agency would be determining that this is an eligible project, that it would have a positive impact on the city, and that it would meet the requirements for the IDA to provide assistance. And so this resolution would authorize the agency documents in our standard form for the with the specific conditions that are outlined in Exhibit A, which again, we're going to go over in just a second. So this authorizes the agency officials to execute these subject to these conditions. And process would be that when the developer is in a position to execute the agreement, typically, you know, when their funds are available from the state then or lender, then we would execute the lease agreements, and at that point, the documents would become binding. So they would include these conditions. So let's go to Exhibit A, which outlines the conditions that would be included in the agreements. So the permitted use is affordable residential rental senior housing. This constitutes adaptive reuse, 65 units, including environmental remediation of the structure. Sustainable improvements are identified, and then the unit maxes, as stated in the application, occupancy, all of them seniors at 60% or below of AMI. And supportive services to be provided for 20 units. And this includes definitions of AMI, which are based on LAHTC, low-income housing tax credit regulations, and gross rents calculated as required under the low-income housing tax credit regulation. So this would be both income and rent restricted. And this set of conditions proposes that the regulatory agreement would be required, but to the extent that there's a state regulatory agreement, which is going to be more stringent than a fairly basic one that the IDA itself would prepare, that agreement, as long as it's in effect, would meet these requirements. So we would have a condition that says there's a regulatory agreement, but that will satisfy it, because HCR will do all of the monitoring and compliance. They have annual compliance monitoring as part of their funding. So the pilot schedule, which is the primary thing that we've been talking about here, we always have to say that you can't have exempt status. We can't give you exempt status today. We have to be able to give you exempt status on the taxable status date after the closing. So there will be a period of time during which there will be a blip of taxability, and then the base period will come into play. The base period would be for the first couple of years. It'll be until the earlier of the completion date or the completion deadline, and 12 months after that. So this would be a pilot payment of $36,000, and then the 5% shelter rent would kick in. So there's that minimum payment during that period of time. The total shelter rents, and this is the same as the calculation in Providence Schuyler, total rents less the cost of providing utilities. And we do not have a description in here of, Mike used a vacancy percentage, but that's just an estimate. This would be actual shelter rents. So it wouldn't be Mike's estimates. I just want to point out this are based on full occupancy less a vacancy rate. This is shelter rents that they would actually pay the pilot, base the pilot on, would be the actuals, right? So they will account to you for those every year. And Heather can, I think, attest that that's how the Hudson Terrace project works, and presumably that's how the Providence project is going to be working. That was just recently closed. And so we have our typical, we can do annual or semi-annual. That's a agency discretion for convenience. So we have the recapture provisions that are required by the statute. Those are based on a 36-month completion deadline, which is our standard provision. And so failure to comply with these requirements would trigger a recapture process. That's a hearing process, not an automatic revocation, but it dictates what the provisions would be. These would be incorporated per our standard uniform operating or uniform tax exemption agreement. So except for that one change, are there any questions about the resolution?
Yeah, I have a quick question. So when we say seniors, as defined, is that 62, 65, is it 67, or is it non-defined?
I'm sorry, what is?
What's the definition of seniors under the statute?
Yeah.
Um,
60, 65.
no, it wouldn't be 65. Typically, it's 55, and the company can.
This
clarify.
project is 55.
Yeah,
Okay, perfect.
that's what's typical.
We're all moving.
You and a couple. I got a bit of time.
I'm busy the rest of the
I could have lived here 15 years ago if it was built.
And the recapture, is there any issues about habitability? Do we have, is there any clauses in there to make sure the property's kept up?
So in our agreements, that would typically be in the regulatory agreement. It is because that's what is specific to a housing project.
Right.
In the state regulatory agreement would have habitability requirements. So we would be relying on that state agreement to meet those conditions.
Okay.
Jonah, do you have anything to add?
On the regulatory agreement in
Well,
particular.
just in response to that question, that is what would require you to make sure that the units are compliant with habitability requirements, correct?
Correct. There's an extensive inspection process prior to occupancy as well that HCR conducts.
Right, but the obligation to continue the project in an ongoing compliant manner is
Yes,
also
yeah, that would be
also
under
notified.
HCR's regulatory agreement, correct?
Right. Thank you.
Is there any other questions at this point? We could public comment.
No, it's very good, thanks very much.
And, it's structured to address the issues that you've raised consistently, about, not locking in, a fixed pilot payment for more than 10 years. And also, it's does result in the 31-year cliff or 33-year cliff, not being as, drastic as it would otherwise be.
And I think, I mean, as we've discussed before, even though this is a lower shelter rent number than any of the other projects we've done. Terraces are 10, right? And Providence Hall is at 7, but I think the combination of the fact that they're committing to a low AMI percentage and the fact that they've got remediation on that building and the fact that, they're looking to bring that building back online, I think are all strong rationalizations for the lower number. And I'm just saying that because, there's gonna be people out there who's saying like, why is that one so much lower than the other projects we've done? But I think there's a real valid reason to it.
Yeah.
And the remediation is really important, because that's, as it says, it's a hazard.
Yeah.
Agree. Did we ask Jonah if he wants to? Jonah, did you have any comments? At this point?
Yeah, no, I appreciate that point, just differentiating this from one of the other projects. I think compared to some of these other projects we're comparing to in Hudson, like that, we're serving a lot of vulnerable populations here. It's a senior population. It's, there are 20 units of supportive housing that are going to have on-site supportive services supporting that population. And we have a mix of pretty low income tiers. So, we're hoping that, with all of the challenges we have here, which are many. We all know of the environmental remediation here. We're trying to serve low-income populations that, there will always be challenges serving that, we can secure this assistance needed in order to move forward with this project, which we're really enthusiastic will have a positive impact on the city of Hudson and Columbia County.
Thank you. Last, before the public comments section, we do have the, evaluation form. People have, we have an extra one from Margaret.
No, what's the website?
Basically, this is the, review that you, this is a review that you, entertained, several years ago to, make sure that, you're serving, your broad mission.
Mhm.
You get a number of points, per criteria. Jonah and I reviewed this, and, they self-scored themselves. And, if you, projected new jobs created, there'll be 5, so they get 1 point. Retain jobs, it's a new project, so it is 0. Projected wages. They indicated that they would be $25 an hour above across the board. Economic impacts on the city and or county. They gave 3 based on purchases of construction materials and labor within the city. Workforce training. They indicated that certainly they would be training their own staff. And both the people who are doing the administrative work and the maintenance and operations. The affordable housing environment, they felt they were probably entitled to 10, not 3, but that was the highest score. And additional positive impacts.
So the only thing I would say here, Mike, that I think you need to put an asterisk on the affordable housing score of 3, because this is actually not a workforce housing project. And I think we need to be clear that this, although it's not by the letter of how we do this, it is housing for a vulnerable low-income population. But I would just put an asterisk on that, because technically this is not workforce housing.
And or we might want to think about broadening that
Right,
criteria, the
exactly.
definition of that category.
Right, exactly.
And, I think too, the balance of that is, there isn't a retired person, at that income level that I know who doesn't work.
Yeah, but workforce housing has.
Yeah, that's a different context.
It has-
Yeah, thank you. Any, modifications, Jonah?
And also, you have people going into that building who need support.
Yeah.
Care, so they are
They're
not,
not gonna work. Yeah, yeah.
we just need to be active.
So, we, review that in advance of, your, final discussion and, vote whether to approve or not to approve on Wednesday,
What time is the meeting Wednesday?
9:30.
9:30 sharp?
Yep. The late
Did Dominic have any comments?
Dominic?
I just got one question. This is gonna be a lottery system for individuals, correct? Because of the tax situation with the state, correct?
Correct. HCR conducts a lottery for all the projects they finance.
Well, is there a way, because I was down at the Tannersville HCR, and somehow they managed to get 20% of preferential for the Tannersville residents. Is there a way to inquire to Darren Scott to see if this could be an option for city residents having preference at a certain percentage?
Jonah, I've also, at one of the early presentations, this question was asked. And whoever was presenting from Penrose had indicated that they were looking at methodologies to allow for non-lottery assignments.
I think we can have that conversation with Darren. I would say here, just because we're already age restricting to 55 plus, and we have certain income levels only, we're limiting our population substantially of who we can market to. So, we just want to make sure we're not putting any restrictions on the property that are limiting the ability to fill this housing quickly and to fill the housing to people in the city and the county.
Jonah, do you have a sense of how wide a net they cast in terms of, offering people entry into the lottery? Like, is it based on a county? Is it based on a mile radius? Or I'm just curious, I don't know.
I believe it's a statewide lottery, but I will have to confirm that with you. But, locally, typically you do see mostly people coming from the county and adjacent counties occupying these projects, especially for seniors where moving, is typically more challenging, right? And they have to plan farther in advance than maybe other populations.
Interesting. Thank you.
Great. I'll open it up for public comment.
I just have one suggestion, just for clarity and accuracy, that we could, it's a 55 year age limit. can we have that definition included somehow in the resolution?
Is that a requirement of the program that you're applying for, with HCR? Or at least the
No,
way you're
it's
making
not.
applications?
It's not. There is a senior housing, there's a senior housing term sheet, but that term sheet is 62 plus. So, you know, we wanted to have broader marketability due to the size of the market. So we're intending to market this at 55 plus.
But where was that indicated?
It's in the proposal.
It's in their proposal to the state.
To the state.
Yeah, so
Mhm.
a lot of that you might otherwise be concerned about are gonna be dictated by the state.
Okay.
Yeah, just include it in our.
Yeah, so
proposal.
that it will be included in our, you know, that would be included in our regulatory agreement. We'll have to get a waiver, a housing waiver from the state as well in order to age restrict.
So can we ironclad that here?
So they have to get the waiver from the state to drop it from 62.5 to 55.
No, I understand that, but can't we like assert that that's, you know, the intention of the Hudson?
It's in
With respect, for the board, if this proposal was for this property to be open to all residents, regardless of age, would the IDA not finance it? The question is, what are the conditions the IDA wants to put on this? The reason it's identified as senior housing is because that was the applicant's request. And so it's important for the IDA to understand that's the proposal that's in front of them. But in terms of whether the IDA would require it as a condition, I think that's something that we would have to talk about.
Okay.
I don't recommend it. It's in the application.
Any
The
other,
state would do whatever way they put in.
No, that would be an application.
any other public comment?
Yeah, I just think it would be more accurate and definitive and stating an intention. So I think we all feel like the 55 minimum that we just stated.
All right, there being no more public comment, I'll make a motion to adjourn.
So move.
All in favor?
Thank you all. We appreciate you being here and offline.
Thank you.